So Rob, I wanted to talk to you because in a couple of months I'm heading up to the Arctic to do a pretty remote, pretty long solo expedition by canoe. So lots and lots of canoeing and a little bit of heavy portaging. And you're a high-level triathlon coach, and you're a paddler. So what would you recommend that I spend the next 2, maybe 3 months working on before I head off?
So there's a lot of things to consider with what you're going to be doing. The remoteness makes injury prevention probably the key thing, and if you've got any kind of imbalances or any kind of difficulties with certain components of your musculature, being able to target those in the gym, being able to get yourself strong in places that are going to be subjected to the most not
wear and tear.
Yeah, because you're, and also not even like the most regular wear and tears. When you say you're going to be doing some heavy portaging, you want to be training for the portaging as much or more than you're training for the paddling, because the paddling is relatively low impact, low stress. But if you're herfing that boat over your body, you're going to be putting your main amount of strain through those sections. So if that's where you break down, you can paddle lightly very easily, and it's a matter of you can protect yourself there and build that into your paddling technique and build that in. But when it comes to
that's like to have a catastrophic injury paddling.
Exactly.
Okay.
And so it's when you're actually picking up that weight and taking that motion across land, that's when you're going to see the most stress come onto your body. So making sure that you're super confident with that load, and then the paddling, it's just a matter of that you'll have your conditioning in order, you'll know that you'll have your stroke in order. So yeah, I'd say it's hitting the gym and making sure that portage isn't going to put any strain on your body that it can't take easily.
What about working VO2 max, sort of zone 2 training to develop heart and lungs versus developing muscular endurance in the arms and shoulders and back?
Yeah, I think the biggest difference between doing expedition paddling and race paddling is that you are working in that very different system. You want a paddling quality that you can do all day, as opposed to, like, for me, if I'm training for an event, it's going to be for maximum a few hours. And because you're trying to go from that maximum few hours to maximum whole day, multi-day, you're not going to be touching the same zones. And so, like, working in your zone 1, figuring out how fast you can go slow, where you're not exerting yourself, but you're getting the maximum amount of the watts that you're creating. Efficiency of wattage is pretty much everything in endurance sport, but when you're doing an expedition, if I can use a fraction of a fraction less effort to do the same amount, I'm going to be so much better over the course of the weeks that you're going to be doing your paddling.
So the rule of thumb, unless you've got fancy lactate monitors and heart rate monitors, for zone 2, which is what most endurance athletes spend most of their time in, is the zone at which you can talk and maybe say 1 or 2 sentences, but not say a complete paragraph.
And I guess that's an interesting comment, because there's people will say if you can whistle or if you can have a conversation. Once you start having any kind of a hitch in your conversation, I find that that's where you're starting to touch onto your zone 3. A lot of times when people are trying to do it based on their perceived rate of exertion, their perceived rate of exertion is actually lower than it needs to be. If you feel like you're just starting to work, you're probably working too hard. So it's to have an easy conversation with somebody as you're doing an exercise. That would be that's your guarantee, because if you're going with the metric of 180 minus your age, which is where some people use that as their metric for this is where I want to be with my heart rate.
For zone 2?
Yes. You can go too high very easily. So being below that is better. So, because once you touch over that, that's when you switch from fat burning to carbohydrate burning, and that's where you've changed the dynamic of the exercise.
So in the field, when I'm paddling, and I'm trying to stay in what is called zone 1, where you can go for hour after hour, day after day, what would be the metric there? What should I be checking on myself? My heart rate? Should I be checking my breathing rate? Should I be checking my ability to, recite Shakespeare? What's the cutoff for being able to stay in zone, for knowing that I'm in zone 1?
Zone 1, so zone 2 is easy because you're actively working. You're riding that zone between working and working hard. Zone 1 is you're riding that zone between rest and effort. So it should feel like a difficult walk or an easy walk, depending on how you're feeling. Like you don't go for a hike that isn't on an incline thinking I'm going to really push it. You're going to go in your kind of covered territory. If you're sweating profusely as you're walking, you're carrying too much weight or there's something wrong. So you're trying to find that, what is my walking pace for paddling? If I can walk confidently and competently over a long distance without exerting myself or not going anywhere, that's your metric. It's less about you're not going to be looking for a specific breathing pattern because you won't be breathing hard. You're not looking for perspiration because you don't want to be sweating unless you're in excessive heat.
Sure.
So you're thinking more, is this easy? Am I covering territory? That would be the metric, because you're only trying to beat, you're going to want to be sub 120 for your heart rate, I would imagine. I mean, for myself anyway, it changes with age. But yeah, you're not trying to get up past your warm up, essentially.
Okay. And so spending a bunch of time doing cardio in the next couple of months, you don't think that that's that important?
Well, it is, because what that'll do is, if you can lower your resting heart rate by a few beats a minute, if you can lower when your body starts to try and click over and start using different energy systems, you preserve the amount of effort you can do before you start exerting yourself too much. So like I said earlier, it's not how fast you go fast, it's how fast you go slow. If you can be...
It's not how fast you go fast?
It's how fast you go slow.
Okay.
And so if you can cover territory with ease, running, it's interesting because people talk about easy speed, and that's where you've turned that kind of plodding jog that people do where they're sitting between 5.5 and 7 minutes a kilometer to suddenly you're doing less than 5 minutes a kilometer, but it's the same effort, it's the same energy that you're consuming, you're breathing the same, your heart rate's the same, your body's just better at turning those watts into locomotion. And so yeah, you can give yourself a bigger engine. I have a luxury of a lower body mass, but at the same time too, I have a very large range of wattage exertion that I can do comfortably. So because I've built that engine, I can stay in first and second gear and not worry too much about, anything that's this kind of activity. But if I had a lower capacity, I would start feeling that strain earlier for the same exercise.
Yeah, and I mean, just because 90% of your journey is in zone 1, if the wind comes up, or you really have to make this crossing because the thunderstorms are coming, or you've got a massive ferry across a river above whitewater, you're not in zone 1 anymore.
No.
Now you're working.
Exactly. And so what I would say is really valuable in that regard is, like, I wouldn't say sprint training, but I would say concepts of power endurance training, where if you need to push for X number of minutes to try and fight this specific capacity, you give yourself that anaerobic capacity, but also by doing that training, you also increase your anaerobic tolerance, where you can have somebody where they're excellent in their low zone, like in an endurance marathon or a pure endurance athlete, where if you were to get them to do heavy lifting or anything like that, they're not going to be able to do that as competently as somebody who has that mixed training. So because you're doing this expedition kind of work, you're going to have the need for endurance and consistent endurance, but also the need for power when it comes up, because you will have to do heavy lifting, you will have to resist specific forces that are coming against you, and having that diversity of system is going to give you the most benefits. So you're trying to take to this expedition an engine that is capable of running smoothly in the low zones and has the capacity to go high, but also to go high and recover well, because if you go high and it breaks the system, suddenly that one effort that you did to get past this rapid or get over this portage, now it's going to be causing you problems for the rest of the time, because even though you did it, you didn't do your training to make it so that once you've done it, you recover and come back to that base level easily. And so that's where doing your surge recover intervals, and where doing your work that is low, but then also work that is higher intensity, so you can develop that elasticity in your system to move between needs as the situation demands.
So in a paddling context, what would surge and recovery look like in training?
In the same way that you do a lot of whitewater, I do a lot of flat water. Or when I'm out doing outrigger on the ocean, it's like you'll have situations like, oh no, I need to put power down now. I have this rapid to get through, I have this pool, this eddy to make it to, or if I'm going to get on a wave, or if I'm moving in a pack and I want to try and go from this position to this position because we're about to go into a turn. To be able to go from this base that I've been holding to stay where I'm, or for you, if you're going consistently to cover distance, say, okay, but if I don't make this gap, I'm in trouble. If I don't make this turn of the tide, if I don't make, that's where you have these things come up, and how you're training for that is you're just going to add elements of difficulty to an otherwise easy paddle. So in triathlon, we were training, you'd have your bike, which is, say you have a 3-hour bike ride, which is, for some people it's a short bike, for some people it's a really long bike ride. But you'll have these moments in that bike ride, whether they're 10, 15, 20, 30, 50 minutes, where you're going at this higher volume, and then you're going to bring it back down and recover. So it's to have that surge, I now maintain this level and I come back down, and in that recovery I don't come down past where I was holding before. So it's that in rowing you'll do your sprint, but it's like after you finish your sprint, well, you still got a couple hundred meters to go. If you fall off below where you were before, you've lost everything that you gained by doing that early sprint. So it's mapping out and having it where if I've got this much time to train and I'm going to put in this castle section where I'm going to come up, hold my new zone, go down, hold my old zone. That kind of
like the crenulations on the wall?
Exactly.
Okay.
Yeah, and so you have multiple different ways that you can do that. The castle is a good way to develop that power endurance where you can shift your gear and turn to this level of effort. The pyramid is the opposite, where you're going up, 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 and then down, down, down. But a lot of that is just learning and developing a sense of what my body can do for what amount of time, because you have a finite amount of time that you can spend in any zone before your body's going to give out. We're talking about spending time in zone 1, and with that, it's like I know I can spend all this time in that zone. If we start thinking, okay, well, if I'm going to do zone 2, it's like, okay, well, I can give you this many hours. Zone 3, I can give you this many minutes. I can do this many seconds in zone 5. Like it just keeps on climbing up, and it's like if you can map it out, it's like I have this as my base, I have this as my second, this as my third, this as my fourth, this as my fifth. And so in your workout, you can touch all of those. It's not productive to touch all of them in the same workout, but it's as a concept of this is what my body is capable of before it needs to rest and recover.
Perfect. That's super interesting. Thanks.
Cheers.